Hi, Open XML developers. Today I'm going to discuss data validation for dates in Open XML Spreadsheet ML. Actually, more to the point, I am going to make this yet another screencast on how to research Open XML issues. I have to tell you, at this point in time, don't know how to put together data validation for dates in Open XML Spreadsheet ML. I'm just going to wing it as we do this screencast, and we'll see where we go as we go through this. Well, first thing that I need to do is I need to understand what are the forms of data validation in spreadsheets. To be honest, I'm not a spreadsheet guru. I know a fair amount about them. I know more about the format than I know about using Excel. But let's just dive in. First of all, I'm going to do an internet search and look for data validation for spreadsheets. First, look for data validation in spreadsheets. And right up here I can see there's this page on Microsoft.com about applying data validation to cells. And when I look at this page here, I'll zoom in just a little bit here. Overview of data validation. And I spent a few minutes reading this page and I saw, yes, certainly this is what we want to accomplish using OpenXML. And here I can see this is probably exactly what I'm looking for. I want to pick the data validation drop-down that is located in the data tools group, and there I will have the option to specify validation criteria for a date. So let's do that and see what we can see. I'll create a new spreadsheet. And let's go over to the Data tab. And here in the Data Tools section of the Data tab, I have this drop down here. I can pick Data Validation. And I am going to pick Date here between some start date. I'll put a start date of January 1st, 2014. And I'll put an end date of February 28th of 2014. And I'll click OK. So now let's come up here and let's put a date in of January 2nd, 2014. And it's happy with that. And let's put January 1st, 2013. And it tells me that I'm not allowed to do that. Well, I'm betting that I can just go poke around in this Excel file and see what's going on with it. So first thing I'm going to do is save this Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to start Visual Studio 2010, which to date is the only version of Visual Studio that supports the OpenXML package editor power tool. However, that is going to change soon, we hope sincerely. I'll drag the Xlsx onto Visual Studio. First thing I guess that I'll do is I'll just go in and look at the sheet information. I'll format the XML, and I can see down here that there is this data validations element that is a sibling to sheet views and a sibling to sheet data in the worksheet. There is a data validation with a given type, and it has allow blanks is true, show input message is true, show error message is true. The reference is A1. I'm guessing that that is the range that this applies to. Well, let's make a couple of changes and see what we find out. Down here in the Formula 1 and Formula 2 elements, we can see these numbers, and this is one of the ways that Excel stores dates. It stores them as basically integers from a certain date, a count of days from a certain date. There's a lot that has been written on this about Open XML. I'm not going to dig into all of that too deeply here. Just suffice it to say that these numbers here correspond to the days that I entered into that dialog box for selecting a range of dates. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand that data validation and make it cover 3 cells. So I'll close this here and not save changes. Open up my spreadsheet again. I'll go to data, data validation, data validation. It says the selection contains some cells without data validation settings. Do you want to extend data validation to these cells? And sure, I'll be happy to do that. And when I look at the arguments in this settings tab in this data validation dialog box, they are still exactly as I want them to be. I can go over here and look at the input message. I can also put a title here, and I can say enter a date in the valid range, and another message is the valid range is from January 1, 2014 through Feb 28, 2014. And there is this error alert over here, and there are 3 types of errors. There's stop, warning, and information. And if I come over here, I can see stop prevents users from entering invalid data in a cell, and they can either retry or cancel. Warning warns users the data that they enter is invalid, but it doesn't prevent them from entering it. They can click yes to accept the invalid entry. And there's information, informs the users that the data they entered is invalid without preventing them from entering it. This type of error alert is the most flexible. Well, we can pick any one of those, and we could find out more about how to set up the markup for each one of those. I'll leave it as stop here, and I'll put the title arg invalid date, and the error message is enter a better date, and I'll click OK. So now we get this message, enter a date in the valid range. The valid range is from January 1st, 2014 through February 28, 2014. That is exactly as I wanted it. So now let's put in March 1, 2014. And it tells me arg invalid date, enter a better date. I'll say cancel. When I do cancel, it removes that invalid date there. So now we've set up a more complicated data validation setup. Let's save this and close it and go look at it in the Open XML Package Editor Power Tool again. I'll drag it onto Visual Studio 2010. I'll open up Sheet 1. I can see a lot more information here. First of all, I'm going to add a carriage return here so that I can see these various attributes in an easier way. One of the things then we can see is all of that information that I configured about this data validation is stored here in these attributes on the data validation element. So again, we have the type is a date, allow blank is 1, show input message is true, show error message is true. The error title is arg invalid date. The error is enter a better date. The prompt title is enter a date in the valid range, and the prompt is valid range is from January 1st This is what I entered, and the range is A1 through A3. So this basically answers the question of how to configure data validation for dates in Excel. Let's go one step better, and let's go take a look at this data validation element in the IS 29500 standard. I'll open up IS 29500, in other words, the Open XML standard in Adobe Reader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down here in the table of contents of part 1 of Open XML IS 29500. I'm going to expand spreadsheet ML reference material, and I'm going to go look in worksheets. I know that this is in worksheets, and I am going to expand the 18.3.1 worksheets node. Let's look down here and see if we see there's data validations and data validation. Let's go look at this data validation element. I can see lots of things here. First of all, there's this allow blank attribute. I remember seeing that one form of data validations is to specify a list of acceptable values, and I'm going to guess that this is what this is all about. Here's the error attribute, which is the error message, and here's the error style. Let's go ahead and take a look at this side by side. So here's the error attribute here, the error style. I didn't change the style, so I'm guessing that the default style that is acceptable for data validations, in other words, this stop variety of style, is the default value for that. We can see the error title, the input method editor mode. That's going to have to do with the various Asian languages. That's interesting. The relational operator, if you're going to say it's greater than something or less than something, I'm guessing that's what that's all about. The prompt title, and so on. So there's lots of information about those attributes on that data validation element. Here I can see the sequence of references attribute, this sqref, and that answers the question for me, what did the sq stand for? It means it's a sequence of references, and that means that you can probably have something like a comma separated list of ranges. Let's go take a look at this here in the standard. It's a sequence of cell references and they're space delimited. So that answers that. They're not delimited with commas, they're delimited with spaces. Well, in a very short amount of time there, we figured out a fair amount about data validations. We can do one more thing here, is why not go in here and change this from A1 to D5. So we're changing the reference right here in the markup. Save it, close it, open up our workbook. So A1 through D5. So when I click here, it should and does give me the behavior of having a date validation for that cell in that range. That's all I'm going to cover in this video. Short and sweet. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.